The figure of Apollo looms large over the whole play. It looms large not because Apollo appears. Sophocles, on the whole, with exceptions, doesn't make gods appear on stage. But Apollo looms large through oracles. Oracles are frequent in Sophocles in general, and they are frequent in particular in this play. The reason, if there's one reason, is that they are a very neat mechanism for the playwright to explore the theme of limits of human knowledge. So we're back to irony. The oracles are delivered. We, the audience, understand them. Characters sometimes understand them too late. So in the case of Oedipus Rex, there's one oracle right at the beginning of the play where Creon finds out that the reason there's a plague here is that that there's pollution because the murderer of Laius, the ex-king, hasn't been found. We know it's Oedipus on stage, nobody knows it, so that sets off the action. And then there are two further oracles, which we learn about later, but which actually are further in the past. One was given to Laius, who was told that he would be killed by his son, and that's what made Laius then have his baby son exposed in the mountains. The other oracle given to Oedipus, who is trying to find out who he is, and he finds out that he's actually due to sleep with his mother and kill his father. Both are set in the past, but they are told to us now, one by Oedipus, one by Jocasta. So, since these oracles effectively set in stone the story of Oedipus committing these terrible crimes, it's very hard for us to come to any conclusion other than that at one level at least he's utterly innocent. He tried to escape these prophecies. We can argue about whether this is Apollo, whether this is fate, but in any case it's a stark prediction by the oracle, and Oedipus, for all he tries to do, can't get out of it. So if you want one answer to why does all this happen, the answer must be Apollo stroke fate. You can then complicate the story because you realize that the Oedipus that you see on stage is not an easy man. He loses his temper with Creon, he loses his temper with Tiresias. He is, even though trying the best in some respects, quite a difficult king. One characteristic that you see throughout the play is his great wrathfulness, olger in Greek. And interestingly, that word olger appears also when he talks about the past event in which he killed Laius, not knowing it was Laius. So we can speculate about a human dimension of this. We can sort of see this wrathful man who is a bit quick to jump into action. But first of all, that won't help us greatly for his sleeping with his mother, which isn't exactly a sort of wrathful thing to do. It also will only help us so much with the killing of his father, since we have that stark oracle. It helps us perhaps a little bit more with the other act, which happens in the course of the play, which is a self-blinding. Later on in Oedipus at Colonus, a play Sophocles wrote much later, which looks back to Oedipus Rex in various ways, he talks about that event, the self-blinding, as something he did in a moment of strong emotion, and he wished he hadn't. So perhaps there's a little bit more room there for thinking about both sides. And in fact, straight after the self-blinding, when he comes on stage perhaps with a bloodied mask, he says within two consecutive lines, "It was Apollo who did this. It was me with my own hands." So it's not true that the play is all about Apollo with no human side to it, but Apollo looms very large. One way of putting this into context is if you zoom out and think about Greek tragedy and gods and fate and humans in general, then you find that in many plays there is more than one answer to the question of why did the terrible thing happen. Often some of the answers are human, often some of the answers are divine. People sometimes call that sort of dual causation. But, and I think that's the important thing, the relative weight given to the different factors is very different. So if you ask the same question for Agamemnon, Aeschylus Agamemnon, you would get a very different answer. And for Oedipus Rex, it is very much a play where we have a crystal clear oracle that predicts these terrible things to happen, and so there's no way around Apollo and around the gods and around fate and trying to make sense of the play. And so we end up with a play in which we have to come to terms with the problem that this man who, yes, he may be difficult, but he very much tries to do the best thing. This man who is exceptionally clever, he has managed to answer the riddle of the Sphinx. This man who seems to rule his city well, this man who tries to save a city from the plague, but this man nevertheless is doomed to fall. And so one finds oneself thinking, I don't think one finds answers, but one finds oneself thinking about that paradox, about that paradox of this, the most outstandingly able of men, suffering the most terrible of fates. And there is no answer. There's no answer why, as there is no answer to many of the terrible things that happen in the world. And so, that must be one of the reasons why this play has been successful over the years.